So, Sony has officially revealed the complete lineup of games that will be featured in the PlayStation Classic Mini Edition. If you don't know, about a month or two ago, I want to say, it may have been 2 months, I lost track of days at this point, but it's been about a couple of months. But the point is that they revealed that they were making the PlayStation Classic, but we know it as the PlayStation Mini Classic Edition. They had officially was going to release it, and basically they first revealed Final Fantasy VII, Wild Arms, Ridge Racer Type 4, Tekken 3, and Jumpin' Flash. And they said that they will update with the remaining of the game listings that they have. Now, along with the official listing of the games, I also wanted to update information in terms of the system itself that I had either lack the knowledge of or didn't realize it firsthand. So let me go ahead and update you on that real quickly. What it was that I had stated that the USB cord I figured was going to be used to transfer data from like the PlayStation 1 Mini to either PlayStation 3 or PlayStation 4. And I thought, judging by looking at it, I figured that you could switch games out. And I figured if that was the case, that would have been a perfect benefit. Turns out I was wrong. It turns out that was actually its actual purpose is to be a power cord for the system. In other words, it was supposed to supply power to the PlayStation Mini Classic. And I keep forgetting that we are in an age where USB cords are power cords as well. I keep forgetting that, mostly because I mostly use them to transfer data from one thing to another. I keep forgetting that, yeah, because of the smartphones and cell phones these days, you can actually hook them up to a USB port and it will charge them. I mean, naturally you could use them to transfer data, but you can also use them to charge your phone whenever it is not being activated or used, depending on the situation. But I keep forgetting that. Now, some people complain that, they could have at least thrown in a plug-in adapter of some kind or something like that. I would argue against that, because we've entered in an age where now USB is being used more and more as a just form of like external use nowadays, like an everyday use. In fact, from what I know, there are some hotels that supply not the low end, but the mid and high range hotels now actually have not only a plug-in port, but also a USB port on top of it. And plus, if you wanted to go into that extra discussion as well, there are some different plug-in adapters, extension cords, stuff like that, that not only have like tens of the plugins, but they also have like anywhere between 2 or 4 USB ports for charging purposes and stuff like that. So arguably USB is being used more every day. And plus, if you're interested in the PlayStation 1 and you don't have a computer, chances are you did not know about the PlayStation 1 unless a friend of yours told you about it. So it's like, technically almost everybody has a computer at this point. Every computer basically has a USB port of some kind, so finding power for it is not going to be that hard. Plus, a power adapter, depending on what you get, they're like $1 each, so it's not going to be that expensive. So, in all honesty, I don't see it being a major problem, in my personal opinion, but I didn't even realize that it was just a power cord. I didn't even realize it. It's like, I looked at it and I was like, yeah, I don't see a power cord, I just see the USB port, and it's like, oh, that is the power cord. I did not realize that. But anyway, that's the update part I wanted to go ahead and throw in, because that was my mistake on the last video. I didn't even realize it. But let's go ahead and talk about the games, the full list of games that is going to be in the PlayStation Mini Classic Edition, and then give my thoughts as well as a final grade as to like if it's even worth it for everybody or not. So let's go ahead and go into it. So Battle Arena Tozend, which I looked at it and I was like, it basically kind of reminds me of a sword fighting Soul Calibur like game. It basically is Tekken but with swords. That's the best way I can put it. Then you got Cool Borders 2. That is basically a snowboarding game. Don't know why they added that on there. I'm sure they were like, well, we gotta add some kind of a sports game to it, and snowboarding is considered a sport. It's like, well, yeah, but at the same time, why? Destruction Derby. Admittedly, Destruction Derby may be a racing game, but it's more about destroying the other opponent's cars and stuff like that. So, in all honesty, that's a pretty good idea to add that there. Final Fantasy VII, obviously. Grand Theft Auto, the first Grand Theft Auto. I don't know about that. I don't know why they added Grand Theft Auto to begin with. Obviously, they could have had a better choice to choose from, but whatever. Intellect Cube. That one is supposedly a puzzle type game. Basically, it's where cubes basically try to fall on your character, and your main purpose is to go around the entire platform without getting yourself flattened. That's my ideal. I may be wrong on that one. I don't know, but there's that. There's Jump and Flash, Metal Gear Solid. I don't know why. But for some reason, a lot of people said that Metal Gear Solid has to be on there. Why? Why does it have to be on there specifically? Okay? That's what I want to know. Why does it have to be? Why does it have to be? Why is it so important that Metal Gear Solid has to be on the PlayStation Classic? Here's my thing. You can get Metal Gear Solid 1 easily anywhere. Okay? Technically, they re-released it whenever they had the Metal Gear Solid Trilogy for the PlayStation 2. The 3-game set where it had Metal Gear Solid 1, 2, and 3. Technically on the PlayStation 3, they did a semi-remaster collection where it had the first one, second, and third one. And then they did a whole Metal Gear Solid collection series release for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, to where basically you can play 1, 2, 3, 4, as well as Peace Walker, if I'm not mistaken. So, technically you can get this relatively easily. I get why it is essential, because it is kind of like the bridge between like what most people knew about gaming and what Metal Gear Solid made a push the bar up for how gaming, in terms of storytelling progression, should be put out and stuff. But I don't see why it has to be on there. Like, you would probably buy it even if it didn't have it, probably, depending on what other games they would have on there. But I'll give my reason for that in just a sec. Mr. Driller. What I got from it is basically a... I'm assuming from the looks of it, it looks like a backwards version of Tetris. Because what you're doing is that you're drilling downward by different colors of these different types of blocks from the way it looks. I'm not familiar with the name. I never heard of this title before, but I imagine it looks interesting. It looks like it'd be fun anyway. That's what I took out of it. It looks fun. And then there's Oddworld Abe's Odyssey, which I kind of figured they'd probably add that on there, but I didn't know. Rayman. Side-scroller Rayman, so that was a good idea to add that on there. Admittedly, there was probably like... Well, I mean, Abe's Odyssey is also a side-scroller as well, but we'll go into that later on. Resident Evil Director's Cut. There could have been a better choice than that, but whatever. I mean, you've got Silent Hill that was released for the PlayStation 1. They could have easily added that instead of Resident Evil. Just for horror aspects, not for so much shooter aspects, but just for the horror theme, they could have easily picked Silent Hill. I haven't played it, but I imagine it probably would have been better as a horror theme. And I'll get to that in just a little bit. Revelations Persona. I'll talk about that in just a sec, but I'm gonna tell you right now, that one alone is enough for people to go, yeah, it's worth it. And I'll talk about that in just a sec. Ridge Racer Type 4, we already knew that. Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo. Basically, that is a Capcom Street Fighter fighting Tetris puzzle game, where basically you do Tetris. You basically play these Tetris games and everything like that, and as you're playing it, your character actually do combo attack moves and stuff like that, based on like the combination that you use. I think that one's going to be really good. It's an interesting idea to add that on there. You also have Siphon Filter. I'll get to that in a little bit, but I feel like that they could have easily picked something else. I don't know, but that's just me. Tekken 3, we knew that. Tom Clancy Rainbow Six, I'll get to that in just a sec as well. Twisted Metal. I'm kind of glad they added Twisted Metal on there. Obviously, a lot of people probably would never have thought of it, but Twisted Metal is a fun racing game from what I know. And also, too, we have Wild Arms, which was also mentioned in the previous segment. So let's go ahead and talk about this. Let's talk about all the games that's been talked about in terms of the list itself. It's nearly impossible to get a good list of PlayStation 1 games. And by good, I mean a good lineup of games. The list that we got right here is a good mixture to kind of demonstrate the variety of games that is available for the PlayStation 1, or was, however way you want to term it. Admittedly, there were some games that they could have easily dealt without. For example, Metal Gear Solid, Resident Evil, Siphon Filter, and Tom Clancy Rainbow Six. Those are all shooter games in some form of way. They're a 3D shooter. Admittedly, Resident Evil is probably not the best shooter, but admittedly, you have four shooter games. Those could have easily been replaced with some other game that arguably would have been better added on in there. I mean, yes, you can probably keep at least 2 or 3 of the 4, but I felt like Tom Clancy Rainbow Six, when I first heard that, I was like, isn't that technically a PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4 game? And I looked up and I was like, no, it had a PlayStation 1 game. I did not know that. But honestly, they could have dealt away with that. And like I said about the Resident Evil Director's Cut, if you're just doing it just for the horror aspects, there are better games to choose from that have a horror theme in it. And Resident Evil, while yes, it is an iconic game, arguably it probably isn't a good game to choose from, but that's my personal opinion. You've got a lot of like mixture of like fighter game. For example, you've got Battle Arena Tozen, you've got Tekken 3, which admittedly Tekken 3, you know, if you're gonna have a fighting game, you gotta have Tekken 3 at least. Battle Arena Tozen, at least that's a variety, I suppose. But then you got some of the puzzle, like for example, Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, Mr. Drillman, what was the other one that I was thinking about? What was the other one? Dadgummit. Intellect Cube. You know, you have a variety of like 3 different puzzle games, but Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo and Mr. Driller, I know a lot of people are gonna flag me on this one, but I felt like from what I can see from the screenshots, they both kind of look the same. Not completely the same, mind you, but they look kind of the same. They're basically a Tetris form of gameplay. They're a different form of gameplay, but both of them are somewhat similar in aspects of style. And I don't know. I felt like that you could have added something a little bit differently on that one. Ridge Racer Type 4, Destruction Derby. Oh, what was the other one? There was only 2 racing games. Oh, that's right, Cool Border 2. I mean, Cool Border 2 isn't really a racing game, but it's a sports game, I suppose. Honestly, you could have... I don't know about Ridge Racer Type 4, but Destruction Derby, you know, at least you could add that on there. It would have been an entertaining racing game, per se. Final Fantasy VII, I'm just going ahead and say this right now. You can get Final Fantasy VII anywhere. You can get it anywhere. It's available on Steam. You can get it on the PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4 digitally. I'm sure it's available for the smartphone. If not, it kind of needs to be right now because it's available everywhere else. And they're working on the remake right now. As far as we know, it is still being made. So, it's like, you can get Final Fantasy VII anywhere. Why does it have to be on this one when there's a wide range of different games to choose from? I'm okay with Wild Arms being on there. I'm okay for Twisted Metal. Tekken 3 is okay. Revelation Persona. I'm going to tell you something right now. That game alone is enough to sell the system. I'm going to tell you right now. That game alone is enough to sell the system. I told myself, I said, the only way this thing is going to be drastically needed is if it had like 1 or 2 of what most people consider to be the hard-to-find / expensive games, and Revelations Persona is one of them. To get a decent copy of it, a decent one being that of, like, the case is in good shape, the disc isn't really scratched up, you're looking anywhere between, like, 70 and 80 bucks, and up. You know, we're talking, like, probably a little bit higher. In fact, there was this one retro game store that I went to, about almost a year ago at this point. We went inside and they had the disc only, which they were only charging for 70 bucks. And I was like, I could easily get the disc with the case in good condition for at least 70 to 75. So I mean, admittedly, they kind of overpriced it just for the disc only. But having this on there is enough to have people say, you know what, this is worth it. I could get it. Plus, I get like 19 games for almost for free, almost. Rayman, I have no arguments for. It's a side scroller. It's a fun side scroller. Oddworld's Apes Odyssey, another fun one. I actually enjoyed it, the remake that they had for the PlayStation 4, but it's a good one to have on there. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't know why they added Grand Theft Auto. Even I asked a lot of people that said they could have easily picked a better one than Grand Theft Auto. I felt like they just added Grand Theft Auto just because of it being a popular title. And admittedly, when you compare Grand Theft Auto to that of Grand Theft Auto 5, there's really no reason to have it on this one. Yes, it is the game that started the series, but admittedly, I don't think there was a reason to add Grand Theft Auto on there to begin with. Now, I'm going to tell you why they didn't add certain titles that most people asked for, because these particular games were most common on the list of games that they said that they wanted or would have liked to have, or they think should have been on the PlayStation Classic. They are Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, Medieval, and Castlevania Symphony of the Night. And I'm going to tell you why they probably didn't do those. Number one, Crash Bandicoot is already been remade about a year ago. Spyro's fixing to come out within like the next couple of weeks as a remake. It's fixing to come out, both of them with 3 games each. Sometime as the timing of this recording, they have not showcased it yet, but they are right now within the working elements of getting Medieval being remade right now. As of right now, it is being remade as we speak. So in other words, by the time this video gets released, they have already revealed gameplay footage of Medieval, as well as possibly a release date, probably, who knows. But Medieval is coming out for a remake, so that explains why they didn't put it onto the system. And Castlevania Symphony of the Night is technically already available on the PlayStation 4 right now, comboed up with another game for 20 bucks. So, I mean, that's why those are not on the system, because technically, currently, right now, you can get these games easy. It is not that hard. But admittedly, Final Fantasy VII's on there, and I don't see why they did that to begin with. Everything else kind of makes sense, but I felt like some of them could have been changed up for something else. Again, there's Silent Hill that could have been added on to this one. Some people would argue against me, but I think Heart of Darkness is probably a good one. It's a hard game, admittedly, but it's already attaining a cult following with it now, all of a sudden. Because of, like, Dark Souls and everything like that is gathering around together and stuff like that. And I've actually been tempted about playing this one because it looks interesting. But at the same time, considering how people consider it to be a difficult game, you know, it's a possibility. But then there's also one other game that I would have been happy if they added it on there. I wouldn't even care about the rest of the list if they added this particular one. And then I thought about another one they could have added, but then I was like, well, technically that's an RPG, really. The first one was Einhander. Now, if you don't know what Einhander is, it's a Square Enix side-scrolling shooter game where basically you play as this little drone that's shooting other machines and tanks and stuff like that. And yeah, it looks really fun. And I had a chance to get it. I didn't get it because I thought it didn't have a good price on it. And this is where the part where I should have had a smartphone with me. But, because then I could have looked up the price. But they had it priced at $70. And I thought to myself, I was like, I don't know, I think it could have been a lot cheaper. But then I looked online and I was like, no, that was priced perfectly. I could have gotten it for half. It's like I looked at it and like the cheapest one was like $100. And I was like, oh my dear God, I should have gotten it when I had the chance. Oh, I hate myself whenever I didn't get it when I had the chance. It's like, oh gosh. Because I heard so much about how technically the Gummy Ship Missions is being worked on by the same people who worked on Einhander. So I was like, in all honesty, I wanted to see what Einhander was like in order to get an idea of how the development team was working on this and stuff. I mean, I knew for a fact that it was going to be the same, but I wanted to see how good of a gameplay that one was in order to get an idea of how much I was going to enjoy the Gummy Ship Missions. So if that was to be on this one, that would have been perfect, but Persona is enough to actually say it's worth it. As it stands right now in terms of the list of games that they have on here, I think it's a good mixture. I think it is, at least for like the average person who has never played a PlayStation 1. You'll at least get your money's worth. But if you're a collector, admittedly, if you have half of these games, depending on what the other half is, depends on if you should get this or not. I do not own Revelation's Persona Revelation, whichever way you want to own it. Actually, the only PlayStation 1 game that I technically own is actually that of Final Fantasy VII, Metal Gear Solid, and if you want to be technical, Oddworld's Apes Odyssey. Technically, I have Resident Evil Director's Cut, but my brother has it, but technically we have it in the house. Excuse me. So, I mean, arguably, it would be worth it for me to get it because of Persona, as well as for the mixture that it comes with. So it's like, you know what, this ain't too bad of a mixture. Do I wish the list could have been better? Yeah, I think it could have been a little bit better. But, you know, we got it anyway. And I think when you get closer and closer to other consoles and stuff like that, you have to remember that there are a lot of good games. In fact, I can probably tell you right now that if you had to go back and look through like the SNES and stuff like that, there was a lot of other games they could have added onto those systems as well. And the N64 Mini, if they ever do get around to doing it, that one's going to be even harder to compare to being like if it's going to be as good or not. Because there are a lot of N64 games that me and Delamar could arguably say is like legitimately good. And that should be on it, but at the same time, even if you wanted to put just 20 games on it, it would have been nearly impossible to do because there's like a humongous list of games that people would go, okay, this has to be in there. And you're going to have like 10 or so games that are just like a little bit off from like the main list that are almost like exactly perfect. And meanwhile, you got like other games that everybody else is thinking that, yeah, this is what I think it needs to be on there, and this is what I think it needs to be on there. And just diversity. When you get a game system that has a lot of good titles, and you get people who put together their own particular lists, you're going to have a large variety, and it gets difficult whenever you realize, yeah, that game needs to be on there too, yeah, that needs to be on there too, and it's like, all of a sudden you have like 100 games that should have been on the system, And yet there's no way you can technically do that, because then it would have bumped up the price drastically, you know? Hell, even if you price each game at $5 each, it would have been definitely well worth it. Especially considering that some of these games, and a friend of mine actually averaged out the price with all these games combined together. If you were to average the ratio of these prices, you got at least $220 worth of games just from the PlayStation Mini alone. Just from the list of games that they have revealed, that's $200 worth of games. So you're getting your money's worth. You really are. It's a matter of, like, will you be playing all of them? Don't know so much about Grand Theft Auto because, again, doesn't really interest me. I do definitely want to at least try out games like Tekken 3, Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo at least. I might give Ridge Racer Type 4 a try. Definitely want to play Twisted Metal. Definitely want to play that. Might try Jumpin' Flash. But in terms of games that I definitely plan on playing as soon as I get it, probably Battle Arena Tosin, just to give that a shot. I play Final Fantasy VII so many times at this point, so I may play it just to see how well it runs, just to see that. Metal Gear Solid probably, Oddworld's Apes Odyssey probably, Rayman definitely be playing that, Resident Evil Director Cut, I don't know. Revelation, Persona Revelation, whichever way you want to call it, I will definitely be playing that. And Wild Arms, definitely Wild Arms. But yeah, that's the whole list. That's my opinion about the PlayStation Mini Classic, and this has been just a thought. So let me know in the comments below what you thought about the PlayStation Mini Classic. What games do you think should have been on there? What games do you think that could have been at least marked out in order to add in one or two extra ones that you would have thought would have been added on it? Either way, let me know in the comments below. But thank you so much for your time and attention, and I'll see you in the next Just a Thought. Catch you later, guys.